Hi guys, Colesy, and today I want to talk about a certain video that I've seen. A YouTuber by the name of Caddicarus, if you have seen him, he's a UK YouTuber, 808,000 subscribers. It's very good. I actually really enjoy his content and I watch his videos. Now, the video in question that I want to talk about is the video he made recently, I say recently, it was a couple of weeks ago, just titled, I'm Sorry. You should definitely go check out the video. I will put a link in the description where you can go check it out. Go check out his channel, he's really good. The video titled, I'm Sorry, basically is him explaining why he hasn't been able to make content for a while and the issues he's been having with basically his PC. And that's where I want to touch on things. I am affiliated with Fierce PC and have made many videos about PCs and building PCs and PCs parts, etc. previously. So being as he made this video, I watched the whole video. I've watched it a few times now because I've actually made notes on my phone about things I want to talk about that were mentioned in his video. Caddicarus was, I want to say, just very unlucky. Right now, he has had a bad experience and he has spent a lot of money and time and to try and get a PC sorted that he can use for, you know, whatever he does, editing, content creation, you know, filming, whatever it is he decides to use his PC for. I don't know, I'm not him. He has had a very bad experience from what I have gathered from the video. It's a 26-minute video and he goes into a lot more depth than I'm going to go into here, but I'm going to just address and talk about some of the main points. His opinion seems to be, from watching the video, is that building a PC yourself is very time-consuming and infuriating, difficult, and not dangerous in terms of safety to you, but dangerous in terms of your ability to easily break parts. That's kind of a few of the things I'm getting from his video. Although I don't fully disagree with everything, there are things that I do disagree with, and that is the reason I'm saying he is unlucky in his situation and his experience that he's had with building his own PC. His first issue he had is just the stock issues. Now, this is an issue that many people have had, and it's an issue that I have addressed in a video previously. Graphics cards in particular are just super hard to get hold of at the minute. The stock is super low, and the prices that people are selling them for on eBay, etc., these scalpers are ridiculous and hugely inflated. Linus Tech Tips has done a video about this, which I have learned more from, but effectively there's a shortage on silicon, I believe it is, silicon chips, which are used in CPUs, GPUs. There's a shortage on those. I assume the whole pandemic has not helped the situation. And also, in our particular case, for me living in the UK and Caddicarus, who also lives in the UK, Brexit has not been our friend. For all of these reasons, PC parts are very hard to get hold of at the minute, and that was the first issue. When you go to buy a PC and you're going to look for what you want, what parts you want to buy if you're going to build a PC, the fact that a lot of these parts are hard to get or silly prices is going to be an issue. So yeah, I completely understand his point. The fact that the parts were hard to get meant that he did actually make a choice of instead of going with the 3080 that he wanted to go with, he decided to go with the 3090. That's the GPU I have, and I went with it for very similar reasons as Caddy did. He says, due to the 3090 being a generally more expensive card, less people are going to buy that, which means that being able to secure one of those and find one of those in stock is actually easier. I had the exact same thing when I was looking for a new PC. I wanted to get a 3080, but in the end, the 3080s were so hard to get hold of that I ended up going for a 3090 because they were available. Yes, it was more money, but at the end of the day, it tends to not be that much more money than people are trying to sell 3080s for on eBay anyway. So he went for exactly the same reasons I did. He went with the 3090. Issue 2, he says it's an issue. It is an issue, kind of, but that's the price. These were the parts he went with. So he went with RTX 3090, as we just discussed, rather than 3080. A Ryzen 9 5950X. Again, it's a new CPU, so it's kind of hard to get hold of at the minute, but yeah. Asus Prime X570p motherboard, Corsair Obsidian 750D, Corsair RM850X power supply, 2TB SSD, Blu-ray drive, Noctua NH-D15 CPU cooler, and 32GB of Corsair RAM. A very nice PC by any means. Like, that's a really good PC and definitely a solid build, and it's going to be good for a few years. But yes, that PC is going to be on the more expensive side of things because it is using, you know, higher end, top end components. Those parts came to the price of £3,780, which yes, is a lot of money. I also spent a lot of money on my PC. Let me see how much my PC cost. I can't remember how much mine was. Mine was similar to his. I didn't go with a Ryzen, I went with an Intel CPU. So the price is not going to be exactly the same, but okay, so for my PC, which had a 3090 in it, 32 gig of RAM as well, again, motherboard's going to be different. I didn't have a Blu-ray drive because I don't really need one. Obviously, he decides that he does need one. Price is going to be different, but I paid £2,900 basically for my PC, which I think, considering he paid $3,780 and that was for parts that he had to build, and I paid $2,900 from Fierce PC and it came built. I don't know where he got these parts from specifically, but I feel like that is rather expensive. From Fierce PC, you can get a 3090 with a Ryzen 9 3950X, so not the 5th gen one, or is it 4th gen? I can't remember. It's the older generation of Ryzen 9, still a very good CPU, 16 core CPU. 3090, 16 gig of RAM, not 32, but you could upgrade that. I'm sure you could edit that on the Fierce PC website to make that, but that's like 3,700. So fairly near the price that he paid, but it comes ready built. It has a warranty. It's built by professionals. You don't have to do it yourself, saves you time. And that's part of what I'm talking about in this video. Is I totally agree that if you're into building your own PC or you want to build your own PC, you should do it. Like, it's fun. Well, I find it fun. Caddy has had a little bit of a different experience because of the stress and the just trouble he's had. I enjoy doing it. Yes, it is kind of time consuming, right? Building your PC is going to take you longer, obviously, than if you just buy it built. That's just common sense. But in reality, it seems like it wouldn't really have cost him that much more, if it would have cost him more at all, to just buy a built one. Hindsight is 2020, and at the time, I'm sure he didn't know he was going to have these issues that he had. But yeah, this is why I recommend pre-builts, and especially at the minute with graphics cards being so hard to get hold of, pre-builts are a great way to be able to get hold of a graphics card without having to pay through the nose for your graphics card. You're not going to have to pay scalper prices. You're going to get a slightly better deal, but yes, you're buying a full PC. If you just want a graphics card, it's a little bit more difficult to justify buying an entire new PC if you only want the graphics card. Anyway, like I said, for the parts he got, he paid £3,780. He then had some problems with shipping, and there was the wrong item was sent. I think it was the Blu-ray drive. I think he got sent the wrong item, which again, that's just a thing that happens. Sometimes when you order something from Amazon, you get the wrong thing completely, and it's just odd and confusing, but these things happen. And then due to Brexit, one of the items, I believe it was the CPU fan, couldn't get into the country. He had an issue with that. He had to chase it down, and basically they were like, oh no, they just wouldn't let it into the country. Again, that's a Brexit thing. It's mainly affecting us here in the UK. But yeah, again, that's an issue that you couldn't really foresee coming. Fierce PC had some issues with getting stock into the country because of Brexit. That was when Brexit just happened. I'm sure they've figured it out now and sorted it. It's been a few months, but yeah, it affected a lot of companies. Again, another issue that you just don't want to happen, but unluckily it happened to Caddy. Now it comes to actually building the PC. Once he actually didn't manage to get all of his parts in, and he had them, he then had to build it. Now, Caddy freely admitted in his video that he doesn't have much experience or any experience building PCs, but he did have a friend who he was on a video call with, who is used to building PCs, and he had him on a video call and was going through everything with him to make sure that he built it correctly, did the things like he's supposed to do. He was using a electrostatic wristband, which is good. That's a good way to build a PC, is to make sure that you don't statically shock your parts, because you can break them. In the video, Caddy is saying how delicate all these parts are and how, you've got to be very, very careful. He is to some extent correct. You can statically shock and break your components with static charge from your body. They're not quite as delicate as he kind of made them seem. Again, there's a Linus Tech Tips video that he did where he is deliberately shocking computer components via static shock through his body in order to see if they can break them. It did take a lot more than you would think to break them. They're not quite as delicate as was maybe made out to be, but yes, you should still be careful with them. They are delicate components, and you can knock things off like capacitors, and you can break things. That's again another risk that you're taking in building your own PC compared to buying one pre-built basically, or custom built. It doesn't have to be pre-built in the way that it's a set build, it's got these components in. It can be custom built with you designing it, but then built by somebody else, and you're just paying an extra fee for somebody else to build it, check it over, make sure it works, and you're also getting a warranty. So if there are any issues, for example, Fierce PC, if there are any issues within those 3 years of the standard warranty, then you can talk to Fierce PC and get it sorted. So they built the PC outside of the case first. They built it all on top of the motherboard box. So you have the motherboard on there and you put your graphics card in, your CPU, you basically hook everything up like it would be in the case, but without putting it in the case. Now that's a good thing to do in practice, just to make sure that your components are working, and if there is an issue with one particular component, you don't have to then take everything out of the case in order to like get that component out and swap it out. They did that. That was a great idea. That's a good method to do, and they used the method that you have to do with some motherboards. Not all motherboards come with on-off switches or reset switches on the motherboard. There's a trick you can do where you short circuit 2 pins that are next to each other on the motherboard by putting a screwdriver in between them. It basically shorts them and it just starts it. There's no real danger there. There's no scariness. You're not really going to break it. You literally just touch these 2 pins together with a screwdriver, because it's a piece of metal that allows them to short, and that starts the PC, and your fans will start and you'll know that everything's working. It's just something that he mentioned in the video that was horrifying. I've written, quote, horrifying, and it's not really that horrifying. It's a standard thing that you can do. It's fine. Like, I've done it multiple times. I did it on actually a build that I've got sat there. You can just about see it here. And I did the same thing there. I built it all outside the box and shorted it to make sure that it turned on, and it did. It's not a horrifying thing. It seems a bit worrying when you don't really know what you're doing, but in reality, that's fine. Okay, so this is where some of the major issues start for Caddy. So they did all this, and the USB keyboard and mouse just weren't recognized, which is annoying because that's how you interact with a PC, via the keyboard and mouse, but they weren't being picked up. Obviously, that's an issue that you weren't expecting, and you don't necessarily know why it's happened. These things will happen, and then you go into the stage of trying to identify where the problem is, why the problem is, and what can be done to fix it. Is it a loose wire? Is it something that is genuinely broken and needs returning? You've got to check all these things and find the answer, basically. In trying to figure out the problem, he bought different RAM to try if it was RAM. I think he didn't buy like another 32 gig. I believe he bought one RAM stick of like 8 gig or something in order to just try different RAM in the motherboard to see if it was a RAM issue. Again, makes sense, but basically through all the tests that they did, they found that it was the BIOS needed an older CPU. Now, I've had this when I upgraded I think it was when I upgraded from a 6th Gen i5 to a 9th Gen i5, I think. When I got the new motherboard and CPU, I put it all together with the new CPU in it, on the new motherboard, same graphics card, same RAM and all that, and it wouldn't work. Turns out I needed to update the BIOS on that new motherboard. Now, in order to do that, I had to put the old CPU in it so that it would work and it would update the BIOS. And I could update the BIOS with the old CPU in it. Once I'd updated it, I could put the new CPU in. I believe that's the same issue that Caddy had here. It's an annoying little issue. It's kind of, if you don't know what you're looking at, it's confusing. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know that it had to have like a certain BIOS number. And honestly, some of these websites don't list and don't tell you what like update the BIOS is on, so you wouldn't necessarily know anyway. That's the issue he came across next, and in order to do that, he had to buy an older Ryzen CPU in order to put it in to update the BIOS. Again, another annoying thing that has popped up that has ruined his ability to basically to build this PC. This PC could have been built up and running in a day, but obviously having to wait for this new RAM to come through, this new CPU now to come through, it's taken a lot longer, and that's part of the annoyance I think he's feeling. Once that was sorted, it was built into the case, but once it was put into the case, it wouldn't boot. So everything had worked outside of the case, but at some point in the process of moving it from being built outside the case to being in the case, something went wrong, it wouldn't boot. It turned out that the motherboard was dead. Don't really know the reason for this. Again, in the process of building a PC, you can break components. That is possible. They are to some extent delicate. You should be wearing anti-static wristbands to build to make sure that you don't static shock an important component and that doesn't kill it. It can happen. It's not super common, but yes, it can happen. That's why you should wear these things. That's why you should use these things and be generally cautious with your components. You don't want to break them. You've paid for them. They cost you a lot of money. You don't want to break them while you're building it. I thankfully have never broken a component while building a PC myself. It's part of the reason I didn't build my current PC was because I was too scared about breaking expensive components. When you know, if you're buying a second-hand PC that's cost you a couple £100, I don't mind fiddling with that. I don't mind building a PC. When we're talking a few thousand, I'd start to worry. I'm like, if I break this, it's my fault, and I don't want to be the person that does that. That's another big issue. It's another part that needs replacing. So, new motherboard comes in, PC is working then. PC actually works. You can use it. But then another problem comes along, in that it would just randomly black screen / crash. As far as I can remember from the video, it wasn't as if it was always due to like massive load. You could sort of understand if for some reason when you were playing a game at 4K and you were, or you were rendering a video, doing something that's really intensive on the PC, if that's when it crashed, you could sort of figure that out. You'd figure maybe the power supply wasn't enough. And when it reached those really high limits of performance, the power supply couldn't give it enough power, so the PC shut down. That would sort of make sense, but that wasn't the case. It would just randomly crash at random times. He said sometimes he'd be playing a game, it would crash. Sometimes he'd open YouTube, it would crash. It's another thing that you have no idea why it's doing it, but you have to figure it out. Now, these things happen with PC building, right? They can happen from time to time. You can just find an annoying issue that you don't understand why it's happening, and you just have to go step by step through different parts, through different updates that you've done, and just try and figure out what is causing the issue. At this point, you don't know whether it's a hardware issue, whether it's a software issue, whether it's a Windows issue. It could be numerous different things, and that's one of the more annoying parts about PC building. I understand that PC building is not for everyone, and I know that these issues can happen, and they're very annoying when they happen, believe me. At this stage, he'd been through so many different things, so many different problems that I imagine was super frustrating that, yeah, in the end, he went for a pre-build. I believe at some point during the video, also his editing PC also needed upgrading. I believe. I've got an end cost, but I believe this is kind of for 2 PCs at the end of the day rather than the initial one. If it's for the initial one, that would be way too much money to spend. But Caddy has ended up spending £7,225. And I believe that's not including, he bought a couple monitors. I didn't include those because they're not really related. You can buy new monitors if you need them, and his monitors breaking have nothing to do with the PC he was building, basically. If Caddy had used Fierce PC from the beginning, he would have had no issue. It would have turned up really quickly, and it would have been working like it should be. That's the beauty of it. I've actually had a couple cases where Fierce PC have said it will be, 4 days, 5 days or whatever, and it's turned up much quicker than that, and people have been pleasantly surprised. So that's a good reason to go with Fierce PC, I guess. He has spent $7,000 on 2 PCs, and I don't think that they were both like 3090 PCs. I don't think they were. I can't remember exactly what the second one was. You could have these issues, right? There could be issues, whether it's the way you've built it, whether it's an issue you've caused yourself without knowing, whether it's you having just a bad part. Bad parts happen. Sometimes you can order something that's brand new and it doesn't work. It's broken for some reason. It's faulty. That happens the same with computer components, and it's very frustrating when that happens because basically you're left with a PC that you can't finish building because it won't work because you're missing a vital component, and you're going to have to wait a few days for it to be shipped back to you, a new one, basically, a new part. This is the double-edged sword with PC building. It can be really frustrating and annoying when something just doesn't work the way it's supposed to, right? Or the way it should, just out the box, you should plug them together. I've heard PC building referred to as like Lego for grown-ups, which it can be. It is a lot of slot this into the hole, plug this into that plug. It can be like that. That is effectively the simplicity of it. You don't have to learn how to solder or do any of that stuff. It is kind of just plug in. Yes, you have to be careful because they are delicate components. With certain things like CPUs, with the pins on the CPUs, you have to be very careful. You can bend those easily, and that's going to be a really bad time if you do something like that. If you're building a PC and you've spent all your money on these parts, if you've done like Caddy has and spent like $3,000 on parts, if you're the reason that one of your parts breaks because you did something wrong, because you weren't being cautious enough, because you weren't wearing your anti-static wristband, you can't get a refund on that. You broke it. That's your fault. That's why I recommend companies like Fierce PC. It's not a pre-built. You're not getting some sort of crappy, just thrown together parts from like a rubbish, crappy shop. These are professionals who are custom building PCs for you. It's the same as if you built the PC yourself. It's just somebody else doing it who has more experience than you. there's no harm in doing that. There's no like, I'm not gonna shit on you for getting somebody else to build it if you're not confident. Like, I don't fix my own car because guess what? I'm not confident enough and I don't know enough to fix my own car. I would break it. It would end up costing me more money. It's the same for PCs. It sucks that Caddy had this experience, and you know, I really enjoy his content, and he's a great content creator. There's no doubt about it. And it sucks that he had this experience. And obviously, yeah, it's going to leave a bit of a sour taste in his mouth. But it's not like that for everyone. He's just had a really bad experience. If you're worried about having this experience, of course, I recommend you go check out VS PC. They have some great PCs on there. If you're looking for some help, if you don't know much about PCs and you want some assistance choosing the right components or choosing the right parts or finding the right PC for your needs and your budget, my DMs are always open. Hit me up on Twitter, on Instagram. Both of those are at Colesy Gaming. I will be happy to help you. I help a bunch of people when they send me messages to find their perfect PC, so I'm happy to do that. And yes, if you use code Colesy, that super helps me out and helps to support me. So this video was just talking about PC building. It's not for everyone by any means. I find it enjoyable. Many people find it enjoyable. There's completely different levels you can go to with PC building. Now for me, I'm confident in building a PC, but if we want to talk about overclocking and like liquid cooling, like my own PC, that's a little bit further than my experience goes. I can build a PC that has air cooling, that has like an all-in-one liquid cooler, but if you ask me to do a custom looped water-cooled PC, or like, I don't know, you start getting silly with like liquid nitrogen cooling to try and get like some insane overclocks, dude, that's way out of my realm and I don't want to touch it. That's too scary for me. I'm gonna break something. It's not for everyone. It can be enjoyable. You know, these things will happen in life, and some things won't go exactly as planned or intended, and that sucks when that happens. And Caddy, I know you probably don't want to build a PC right now, but you know, in the future, if you want to make some changes or want to build another PC, you know, give it another chance, give it another go, and hopefully this time it won't go so disastrously wrong with so many issues that pop up. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe if you did enjoy it, and I will catch you guys next time.